Today I'm taking you on a trip to a mountain that I built recently for a musical show. This video is sponsored by Inventables and Squarespace, and I'll tell you about that in the end of the video. So let's get started on the build. The story on this musical show takes place on the Similan mountain on the Alps. So to create the scenography, I went ahead and traced some geometrical and minimal looking contour from a photo that I found from the real mountain and carved it on my X-Carve 3D carving machine from Inventables. It's really great to have these sort of tools around to help with the creative process, and that allows you to bring digital objects into stuff that you can actually touch, see, and feel in real space. There was a mistake on the plywood version, so I carved the second one out of MDF just because I had it on hand. I really like the way this turned out, and I can totally imagine this on a much bigger scale, like a sculpture on the public space. Okay, so I bought a bunch of pine to build a triangular structure that will support the front face of the mountain. The budget for this project was a bit low, so after testing and rethinking for a while, I decided to turn this into a solid surface and make the previous drawing out of light, while also using video projections to complement different moments of the story. I cleaned my table saw blade and rip the boards in half. Then I cleaned up all the ends and started the angle cuts to make the triangle. Okay, so next I'm going to buy a bunch of gray insulation foam to make the front pieces of the mountain. Here I was unloading the car at my parents' house because I realized that I really had to construct at least the triangle structure somewhere before the final assembly at the concert hall, and I had this crazy idea of building it in the street because it was the only free available space I had. On the next day, I packed everything to go to my parents and started working on the foam boards. Still had a lot to calculate and measure from the printed files, and then it was a matter of transposing those measurements to the real big scale. One after another, I made all the cuts to create the entire shape of the mountain and numbered them just like the paper plans. When fully assembled, it will be 12 meters by 5 meters tall. Some of the pieces were a bit more tricky to cut. To finish up some small pieces, I had to go back to my studio and make grooves to fit in the tongues of the corresponding pieces because these small pieces came from the scrap of bigger boards. Now I'm building the wood structure, and to connect the super long pieces, I use straight metal brackets on both sides. So here we are doing some crazy build in the street, and this was super important because angles needed to be corrected, and I started to get the real sense of the scale of this project. None of this needs to be pretty because it's not gonna be seen at all. This smaller triangle is part of the original drawing, but I decided to bring it forward into the stage to create some three-dimensionality, although in the end my idea wasn't fully respected as there was lacking space for the musicians and dancers on the show. Finally, we are at Casa da Música and we have about 2 hours at night with all the technical team to assemble as much as possible, and this was only 2 days before the show. All the stuff was moved in a big van and we tried to carry the pieces as big as possible to minimize assembly time here. I brought my dad and my friend Aitor, adding to the technical team to make everything quicker as there was very little time. Eventually there was a mistake and I had to recut the piece number 2 with an X-Acto knife. This material was a bit annoying to put together and made a lot of crazy noise, but it came out nice in the end. At this point, the technical team had to go, so the three of us kept screwing and sticking the wood structure to the foam while having some interesting conversation on architecture subjects. This is what I've got in 3 hours, and in the next morning the mountain got flipped over and I started to apply 50 meters of LED strip to make the drawing contours. And here was my last time using the Rest of Us ice pick. I recently made a video about it, so take a look up here. This team was absolutely fantastic and we were able to finish the huge construction just in time to start the rehearsals. As I explained before, this smaller mountain won't be able to stay here where I envisioned it and will be pushed back behind the musicians. So from now on I was finishing the video projections and working together with the video technician to insert everything in the correct part of the script. Here are some shots that I made from the rehearsal just a few hours before the final show. The light design and video projections were still being tweaked, but overall this is mostly what it looked like in the end. There were 3 different groups that participated on this show as performers, and this was produced by Education Service of Casa da Música.
1300 anos depois, na moderna cidade situada no sopé da Montanha.
Estou com medo!
These are some of the tattoos that my sister helped me to design that the main character of the story had printed on his body during the final show. Finally, let me tell you about one of the sponsors of this video, Squarespace. Squarespace is an all-in-one platform where you can get unique domains and allows you to create beautiful online stores and websites to make your next move. I switched my website to Squarespace a couple months ago and I really like it. It's super simple to work with. They have tons of award-winning templates that look amazing and very contemporary, and you don't need to know any coding. Everything is drag and drop, very visual, and they provide award-winning 24/7 customer support. So get ready to make your next move and go to squarespace.com/gethandsdirty to get a free trial and 10% off your first purchase. Big thanks to Squarespace, Inventables, and all my Patreon supporters. I hope you enjoyed this project, hopefully it inspires you to make something cool, and thanks so much for watching everyone. I'll catch you guys later.